Flight boss, bitch. You know, for sure. You're now listening to the Mind of an Terry Smooth. I am the Royal Archangel Uriel, and I'm here to carry out God duties and motherfucking responsibilities. And this video right here is going to be about ways you can find your path. Now, there is no simple way. There is no thing that you can just snap on and snap off and be like, oh, okay, if I just do this, I can find my path. No, this takes energy work. This takes experiences. This takes actually doing things in some way, shape, or form. So energy work is whatever your mind is on. AKA, as a spirit, when you jump into that spaceship, when you jump into that mind, where you're directing that focus, where you're directing that vehicle, right? That's energy work. And then actually participating and experiencing is actually letting that light bend in on itself inside your daughters and men that it made and actually putting this to use, acting on those thoughts, acting on those feelings in some way, shape, or form. So, as a spirit, right, there is no simple way. It takes energy work and it takes actually participating. And if you have a fucked up way of putting in energy work because you want things to fall into your lap in some magnitude, or if you got a fucked up way at looking at experiences and understanding your own individual way of going about things and not getting too influenced by others to make you sit back and don't go your path, then for the most part, your spirit is going to be living chaotic, swimming in waters that has no business swimming in. And these waters is not even your waters, not even your chakras. And that's a whole nother video. But once we start to talk about ways that you can find your motherfucking path, here's certain things that you can actually do that'll put you on that path, and you will start to walk through portals, aka manifest circumstances and situations and people, places, and things that kind of give you an idea on what you can start working on because it's starting to look like your motherfucking path in some way. Now, and you can start to marry that, and it can become something you propose to, aka become your purpose. Now, here's the thing, right? The first thing you need to do is start doing the shit that you good at. Now, you probably sitting back and like, hold on, I don't know what I'm good at. That's why I'm watching this video right now. I'm talking about from an objective point of view when we start to look at humanity. You want to know what everybody good at? Everybody is good at saying what the fuck they won't do. Everybody is good at saying, good at coming up with ideas and pointing at motherfucker people saying, I wouldn't do that. That ain't something so you need to tap in what the fuck you good at first. Start jumping into that area of life of starting to point fingers of everything you wouldn't do in some way, shape, or form. Now, here's the problem with that, though. Here's the problem with that. The problem is a lot of y'all live in very small worlds. So you're only pointing at limited things. So the key is to put yourself into a broader perspective. Start getting into things that's unnormal or uncommon to your surroundings. I'm not saying you have to act upon these things, but just start being aware of these things. Some of y'all are only consciously aware. You only like to pay attention to what's familiar. So you're constantly in a routine and cycle of pinpointing to things that you wouldn't do in the area of shit that you already familiar with in some way, shape, or form. So that's kind of limited, right? So your mind ain't even tapping into areas of things you would do, because the more you go down that line of events of, oh, I wouldn't do that, I don't like doing that, oh, that ain't me, eventually you're gonna find, okay, what do you do then? What do you like then? What would you do then? Eventually you're gonna find that area, but you would never find that area if you're not expanding your awarenesses and you're only utilizing what you're good at as far as pinpointing things which you wouldn't do in a very small world. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, you can't even find what would you do in that world, because that world is very limited. You're only paying attention to very small things in the world. So, and that's not the broadness of the world. So the things you can't find, what would you do in a very limited world, that you only can find the things you wouldn't do. Now, here's the thing. Expand your awareness. Start focusing and paying attention to things. Like I said, men and women shall perish when they lack knowledge. So men and women are scared of the unknown. Men means your masculine thoughts. Women means your feminine emotions. So these are your spaceships. So it's scared of the unknown, aka anytime it goes into a Virgin Mary before it becomes a Bloody Mary. A Virgin Mary, it just means going into a new area that you haven't been in before, aka North Node energy. Anytime you experiencing new experiences, that's unfamiliar, and there's no example there for you to come to a conclusion for yourself to feel comfortable. You have to come to your own decision in that area. That's the unknown. when your mind and feelings go into an unknown. And if there's no characteristic, no deification that you could point to, then if you're a weak spirit, you'll find yourself running to safety or running to a safe haven in the spiritual realm in some way, shape, or form, under another demon or whatever, some other kind of circumstance, because you feel unsecure. But understand that this is what's actually going on. Now, at the root of it, you see what I'm saying? At this area, a lot of times when you're just paying attention to a very small world, everything in that world that you find that you wouldn't do, you also can't find what you would do. Now, when you broaden your awareness, aka be willing to go into the unknown, be willing to have new thoughts, be willing to have new feelings, be willing to utilize your internal fire, your internal Abraham, to destroy all the first sons and daughters, aka all those thoughts and feelings that redirected you and made you scared to have a broader way of thinking about life, a broader way of feeling about life. Now, once you reach into this area, right now, you'll start to be more broad into what you are aware of, and now use what you good at again. Everything that you wouldn't do. Now you even into things that you wouldn't even know you would be into, looking at that like, I wouldn't do that. That ain't me. Now you have a more broader realm of reality to build the resistance energy, aka finding the shit you would do. You know what I'm saying? Because that's all that leads you to. That's all where that leads you to. The more you dive into areas of, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do that, it leads you to an area of, okay, then what would you do? But if you were in a small world, you will never find what would you do. So you always find, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do that. But now you're an individual with no purpose and a person who lack on that, I don't know what I would do. See what I'm saying? So you have to remix that and broaden your awareness and then use your energy of, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do that. And then when you start to attract that energy of finding things you would do, it'll be at a more broader scale, not that limited world. It'll be at a more broader scale. So you'll have more access to find things you would do in that little process of analyzing all things you wouldn't do. Because you're doing that in a bigger world. So in a bigger world, a bigger mind frame, you're going to find more things of all things. You see what I'm saying? So not only you're jumping into new things and utilizing what you are good at already, finding things you wouldn't do, you also got a broader access of finding things you would do now. And therefore, this is putting you into a position where you're going to be on a line of events where you're going through experiences in life, finding where you're one of a kind at. Because as a spirit, we all individually did something that nobody else can do. You wouldn't be here if that's the case. Teamwork makes the dream work, but the whole point of you still trying to express your own individuality in this, what we all created as a teamwork makes the dream work, this body, let you know as a spirit, we one of a kind. No one is going to perceive something from our perspective, our area of the space. So we all creating something in these universes, and we're creating these universes to go into, right? No other, your spirit is your space. No other space can see or perceive something from your space, from your individual solo space, your soul, which is an individual spirit, an individual space. So you can't even share space with someone. That's impossible. It's always going to be space within space. You either let somebody's space absorb you, or you in relating to them, or you try to absorb them. Other than that, you can't share space. It's always going to be when one space start to create lights and atoms and eves and cloths to represent itself externally, and then that's going to create that budging out, resistance, fighting, worship, trial and tribulation, conflict, combination, conflict, harmony or harmful, debate. You know what I'm saying? But that's when spirits get too close and think that you can totally connect. Esoterically speaking, you know what I'm saying? But you can't do that. It's always going to show out representations of how that's impossible. You see what I'm saying? So, for the most part, and that's the only thing that's impossible, because that's in possibilities. And spirits create the concept of all possibilities. So once a spirit create something that's possible, it's impossible, M or N, but impossible for another spirit to do that in combining with the other spirit space. This is impossible. You see what I'm saying? So it can only be connected, aka it just looks like more space if both spirits ain't aware yet. Or, you know what I'm saying? That When they both become aware, stars is born. So that little separation, aka noumenal or forms or physical flesh or plasma or starlights or waters, whatever you want to call it, is actually externalized, and now you can actually see the manifestation of separation in some magnitude. You know what I'm saying? Where you could say 1 plus 1. You know? But at the same time, that's just one of the, it's a lot of other ways too, but that's just one of the ways you could find your path. Going on that train of event of finding everything you wouldn't do, because you're already good at that. So once you use that gift and talent in a more broader area, that energy could be directed and more useful in, aka you start being a more aware of more things, then therefore you'll put yourself into a situation where you'll actually find more things you would do. Otherwise, if you're in a situation and you're the type of person right now where you're sitting back and like, I can't find what I like to do. You know what I'm saying? Here's the thing. You know everything you wouldn't do. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be in that situation right now. Like, damn, what I do? I ain't got no purpose or anything. So you already then used and burnt out your gifts and talents of finding everything you wouldn't do. The problem is you're living in a very small world, aka you need to broaden your awareness, because that world you're living in, you have already found everything you wouldn't do. But the world is so small, you can't even find the things you would do. So you have a limited perspective. And this may be due to the fact of your upbringing, you know what I'm saying? Maybe people who are around you, or, you know what I'm saying, based upon thoughts and feelings that you haven't learned how to separate from yet, based upon lack of experiences and not going out into the world, seeing your capabilities and incapabilities, based upon resistance and reactions. So, for the most part, that's the only reason you could be in a situation right now, because you have burnt out your gift and talent. All of these things are gifts and talents. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's a gift and talent. Pointing and looking around at shit you wouldn't do. That's a talent. A lot of y'all good at it more than others. You better believe that shit. So, like I said, just use your gifts and talents for a better team in a better area of life, directed in a better field of reality, and therefore you won't be limited. So when you find out, when you have burnt that energy out and found everything you wouldn't do, you also can't find what you would do. You put yourself in a broader realm of reality, you will find a whole bunch of shit you wouldn't do. Even shit that you never even thought of you'd be thinking about you couldn't do. But guess what else is more greater and more possible? Possibilities of finding what you would do. And shit that you would never think of before, that you would have been into that shit and that you was good at it until you got on that motherfucking path that Uriel just motherfucker spoke about. Flight boss, bitch. And I love y'all from the bottom of my heart. I'm going live tonight. You better motherfucking believe it. Real shit, because we gotta break down these rituals and spells.